Hi, everyone, and welcome to Kingsley Gate in the Spotlight series, her corner office, where we bring you inspiring stories of leading women executives taking us through their journeys of achievements, opportunities, challenges, catapulting them to success today. I am Muna Awwadová, partner with Kingsley Gate, and joined today by Widad Haddad, with a mechanical engineering degree and 20 years of experience, with the last 15 years with Emerson, taking on more increasing responsibilities in leadership. Widad today is the head of the overall business of Emerson for the UAE, Oman, Yemen, and Lebanon. Widad is also a strong advocate for women in the industrial sector, and voicing and contributed at several events in the region, across the region, to strengthen the voice of women in the industrial sphere. Welcome, Widad, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Muna. It's my pleasure to be here. Looking forward to a very enriching conversation with you.
Excellent, great, thank you. Widad, we've known each other for a while. We've been in conversations, particularly regarding the topic of gender diversity across the Middle East. And I think what we really want to have in our conversation today is getting to know more about your thoughts, your opinion across leadership. But if we start with looking at your journey and your career to date, if you are to pick two most important decisions in your career that you have made, what would those two critical decisions have been to help you to get where you are today?
So, Muna, looking back, I think I would pick two decisions that are at a very different point in time in my career. One that was much earlier on in my career. When we graduate in those professions like engineering, lawyers, doctors, we end up leaving university thinking this is what we need to work in as an engineer. And I think one of the biggest turning points in my professional career is when I took the attitude that that degree is not going to box me in that particular profession. That yes, I worked hard to get an engineering degree, but I don't necessarily have to work as an engineer. So 2.5 years after being a proper mechanical engineer on site, I chose to go and explore the corporate training world. And at that time, a lot of people were, looking and saying, well, you're going to drop your engineering degree altogether. And I felt like I wanted to explore something outside of engineering. And I did a very short stint in corporate training. But what that did is it made me as a person feel courageous enough to say, okay, well, I don't have to stick to this degree that I have. But what it also allowed me to do is explore a creative side that, I didn't get to explore as an engineer, because that you get trained very technically as an engineer. That combo later on in my career allowed me to be considered for roles in advertising, for example, as an engineer. Also, I used to go to ad agencies selling advertising space on TV networks. And people in the conversation were shocked when they found out as I was an engineer, saying, what, you're not working as an engineer? But then it gave me a breadth that eventually, when I went back to the engineering world, I was seen as valuable because I had that breadth. And a lot of the time we see people restricting themselves to their degree, thinking that it would be a waste. And I think that decision really propelled me later on. I did not know when I did it that this was going to be its effect, but really propelled me later on to take a broader range of roles in the industry. And the second one would be a little bit later on. When I did study mechanical engineering, my own father even told me, just be aware, this is a man's world. I'll support you, anything, but just be aware, you're going to be among the few women. And he was right. I was among the few women, even until today, with all that drive for diversity. But what that thought that was put in my head, and I hope that it does not get put in anybody's or any young women's head today, is when someone tells you this, it sticks. And then you start figuring out coping mechanisms. Okay, well, I'm going to be in a man's world, how I'm going to, position myself, how I'm going to be part of that world. And throughout the first half of my career, I behaved in a way that I felt like I needed to be one of the men. So I put aside all the traits that come from being a woman that today in the diversity values that we look for are the key things that organizations need, the nurturing, the vulnerability, the authenticity. And so in the first half of my career, I really shut those down because I wanted to be one of the men until maybe 6 years ago. So you would say mid career for me, that I realized that no, actually, I am not one of the men and I cannot be one of the men. I bring different perspectives. And also my life as a mother today is very different from the life of any man in my space. So I cannot be one of the men. I will have to do things differently. I would have to juggle my time differently. I would have to multitask differently. And I started embracing that. Okay, I am one of the few women, but I am a woman, and I'm going to bring all those traits that businesses today seek for that diversity in thought, and embrace them. And I think when I did that, it kind of launched me further in what I'm doing today on the diversity side, but also as a valuable management member in the leadership team at Emerson.
Which is, very as well sensitive area, which I want to touch on. And thank you for bringing that up and highlighting it. So where do you feel would be dangerous traits or behaviors that you have seen that can derail female leaders in their career? Very keen to know your thoughts on this point.
There's, as women in our industries, we face a lot of noise around us, right? We face a lot of noise from overall, as being minorities, maybe the depth of our experience is younger, maybe. The number of people that are very experienced, at least in my field, that are women are scarce because women entered the field later on, after the men have entered the field. So if I'm looking for a 30-year experience professional, it's very hard to find women in the industrial sector with 30 years experience. So we have to, a lot of the time, accept that we need to push ourselves to be in positions that maybe they would have taken someone more experienced, but today they are open to taking a woman in the industry with a little bit less experience. It takes the two sides to recognize this. It takes the employer to have the appetite to say, okay, I ideally wanted 30, but I'm going to drop it down to 20 or 15 and get that thought in my organization. But also it takes us as women the courage to say, okay, this job description says 30 years. Let me shoot out a request. I'm interested in it. Let me see if I can do it and I can prove that I can do it, and stretch ourselves. A lot of the time we lose out on so many opportunities because we don't take that step. But also the noise around us once we are in those positions is very high. So, unfortunately, when women get promoted, you will hear around you others saying, she got promoted because there's a diversity cause in the organization and they want to put women in a director position or in a VP position. It's not necessarily always attributed to the capability of that woman that did the interview and proved herself capable of the role. And that noise will be there. If any of us women think that we will not hear those along our career, unfortunately today they will be there. How do you make sure you tune that noise out and you don't let it affect you getting the job, doing your job, and excelling at your job? The results are going to speak for themselves. But until then, you have to be resilient and tune that noise out, and keep asserting to yourself that I earned this position. I didn't get it because of my gender. They're not easy to do. I mean, we're talking about them lightly today, Muna, but these are not things easy to do when you are focused on getting your job done and you have people around you, giving you wrong claims as those. But I think these are derailing if they're not handled, because your attitude with allowing those noises affect you will be different. And so a lot of success in all people's corporate worlds, man, a female, is advocacy and the full support around you. So you want to make sure that that network is a positive one.
And we'll touch on this in a second, but looking at the traits, and you did mention kind of that resilience and that confidence. I think we are seeing, and continuously across the board, whether it's industrial sector or other sectors, with my other talks, we're finding that women, it's almost like we're afraid to make a mistake, right? It's we're put in a position where if we want to take a role, we're less likely to take a high risk role where we can put ourselves on the spot, unless we're 100% sure, or at least 90% sure that we can do the job. How do you, from an leadership style and culture, more harvesting the culture of women in the industrial sphere, what are your kind of tips to women in that sphere or within that environment?
It's you need the support around you. It's hard to self-motivate and to push yourself always all the time. I mean, us women, we sometimes think we're super powerful humans, right? We are normal, and so we need that support to help us. I think the more women we have in the industry, the more we'll have that support network. I call on any woman who, young, beginning of her career, senior in her career, it doesn't really matter where your position is in the organization. The support for other women in the workspace is hugely essential. And you give support regardless of your years of experience or your seniority in the organization. Sometimes I vent and I open up to women in the company that are junior, because it's important also for them to see that, struggles happen across the entire organization. But also I make myself available for women to come and talk and express their challenges and all of that. And also when you're in a decision-making position, you have power that you should exert towards improving those environments for women so that they do not feel what you just described, so that the culture of the organization recognizes some of these emotions that women might feel, some of these maybe hard life situations that women might face in their own personal life that they can't just leave behind at home and come to work. So how is that culture in the organization helping support these women, whether it's through its network of mentors or whether through its organizational policies and benefits and flexibilities? All that have to come and play. And at the end of the day, we are going to be happy in an organization that has the culture that fits our culture and our needs and what we require to balance the things we have to balance in our life. And a lot of organizations today are putting a lot of emphasis on transforming those cultures and changing things. And I think we are at a very nice time in history today to see that transformation actually happening. Every decision-making woman has to voice and has to contribute to decisions that favor the support of women in organization. And every woman working in a network of professionals, regardless of her years of experience, should be part of that support network to other women.
Excellent, which is very helpful with that. Regarding my following question is more around as the organization are pushing for diversity and really become diversity ready. Where is the balance and to ensure kind of that the balance is there to drive that culture? And then second question is kind of where do you believe personally from the Middle East view or lens, where are generally the barriers that we find that we need to deal with and potentially maybe the organizations need to keep an eye on to ensure that endorsement and that support and the advocacy is there for Middle Eastern women in corporate environments?
Muna, you said the word balance, which is it's a very tricky one for organizations today. We all do recognize and understand the need to bring more diverse workforce into the organization, but we cannot dismiss or forget the existing majority and how that existing majority is going to be interacting and facing those changes that are happening. Not that the effort shouldn't be constant and accelerated. I mean, we're far from that equity stage. And, to get to that equity stage, that balance is going to have to take away from something from the majority to give to the minority. But I think the way organizations need to handle it is recognize what that majority is experiencing, is feeling, if there's threat, if there is a feel of insecurity, if they feel that they don't have career paths anymore because there's emphasis on hiring on hiring women and bringing diverse minorities into the organization. I think the recognition of this goes a long way as one. Sometimes we forget to recognize this because we're so focused on increasing diversity. But also, I think the education piece to the benefits of diversity, because also we forget sometimes why we're doing something. We're so focused on doing it, we forget the meaning behind it. And organizations should put more effort in making the bigger organization understand the benefit of diverse thought, whether it's diverse from gender or diverse from a nationality or diverse from an age group. It has to touch all of these. And that way you have more allies in that, aspiration. You have more support. You have managers who want to learn how they should manage differently if they have a diverse workforce. How do I manage a female employee versus a male employee? So all this is a learning path for the majority, and I think recognizing that will help strike the balance. Will we stop having, for example, men feeling that opportunities are lost for them? I don't think we will stop, to be very honest with you. That feeling will continue. But you know what? Women felt that for a very long time in the industry, so that to get to that equity, this is going to need a little bit of pushing and deliberate effort. Organically, it will not happen on its own. And as long as we can get men to be part of the allyship in that movement, I think the true value of diversity will be understood. Now, when it comes to the Middle East side of things and the cultural side of things, I mean, that adds a completely different layer of complexity in organizations, because you cannot dismiss the cultural norms, the traditions. I mean, in the UAE, we're a melting pot of so many different nationalities, right? Some have differentiation between men and women in the upbringing, and some don't. But a very large part of our Middle Eastern culture has that differentiation delineated from birth. And even if we modernize over the years and we become more open and change a lot of these traditions, they remain ingrained in us in a lot of the things that we do. And so to not account for those cultural nuances that come from these different nationalities, we risk falling into so many traps. Example, we risk maybe assessing the performance of a woman in an organization based on a behavior that, if we don't understand that it's coming from a cultural constraint or a cultural restriction, that it might be attributed to a low performance, when there's a perfect explanation why this person, for example, refused a particular meeting multiple times, because in her culture, she cannot drive in a car with a man who isn't a relative. Mm-hmm. And for part of inclusivity, and we talked a lot about diversity, but diversity comes with inclusivity. When you touch on inclusivity, you have to be inclusive to people who appreciate their traditions and live by traditions that they continue to want to live by, and not separate them from maybe a very westernized approach to colleague friendships and etc. So it's organizations in the Middle East bringing in diversity have to be very well aware and educated about these different changes, variations between people within their organization, and truly make the assessments and the changes to get that inclusivity in without judgment, without biases, without stereotyping, because even a Middle Eastern woman, you can have so many variations of one Middle Eastern woman. And there isn't one better than the other. And there isn't one that would do the job better than the other because she is too traditional or she's too westernized. It doesn't work that way. So to be inclusive in the Middle East with gender diversity, a very complex setup that organizations need to get educated on in order to succeed in their diversity efforts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think we come to the self-promotion as well. Correct? We had a discussion about this earlier on, where you have mentioned or shared that, I mean, typically as women, we'd not necessarily promote ourselves and from kind of creating that internal network within the organization for more people to see the experiences and achievements. I mean, if you can highlight a little bit more around women developing their internal network would be great.
And Muna, this is funny because it's also related to culture. Some cultures are more vocal at self-promotion than others. Mm-hmm. And some women of particular cultures are more vocal about their self-promotion than others. So, you have nationalities who are very shy, who are very, they don't like to talk about their successes. And you have other nationalities that aren't. But in the corporate world, your performance, your success, what you deliver has to be seen. Sometimes you are in roles where that visibility is done just by the pure nature of the role. But in some roles, you are in the back office, in the background, doing amazing things. And if you do not come out and show the great ideas or the different amazing additions and values that you're bringing to that team or to that organization, if you're lucky and your manager does that for you, great, but you can't count on being lucky with a manager who actually goes and talks about the great people in their team. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to take ownership of that. And one of the, I think, mistakes that happens often is we find that one person that maybe we relate to and feel okay with, maybe they're our mentor, and we only self-promote to that person. So yes, you end up having maybe a sponsor or one advocate for you, but it is way more powerful if you had multiple advocates for you who are not coming from the same team, same department, because when organizations look for talent, promoting talent, a position needs to be filled, they look at people around. And if they go ask this person about you and they say positive thing, and then they go ask someone in another country and they say positive thing, and the third, that is extremely powerful, way more powerful than that one person that is in every meeting preaching about how good you are, right? Because again, people start wondering, okay, why is this person always talking about this amazing employee? Is there, is it just that person's opinion? Is it just because maybe she helped him with reports? Or, there's always kind of that question. But when you have several advocates, there's no doubt about the success you brought or the high performance that is seen across the organization. So developing that courage to be proud of the great work you do, make it seen by many if your role itself doesn't expose that, and build those advocates across the entire organization, not by only the purpose of, okay, I want them to advocate for me. No, when you do good, when you bring value to someone, when you help them with something, when you even reply to their email fast enough to give them a piece of information they needed urgently, all of these little things, you do them over and over and over again, and then you end up with a network of advocates that speak on your behalf positively. How would you not climb the ladder if you didn't have that?
Which comes to spending a little bit of time about you with that. So how do you balance your personal work life, and what do you do to wind down?
I think the only way for a woman to balance the work life, because I don't think there is a balance, is to have the right support system. You cannot do it on your own, especially if you want to build a career. I mean, there is no right way, right? You could be ambitious and you want to build a career, or you want just to have a job, right? Either way, the time in the day is the time in the day. So you need a proper support system, whether it's husband at home, whether it's parent, cousin, aunt, sister, or a nanny. So for me, I depend a lot on my amazing, I wouldn't even call her nanny, she's more of a house manager for me, because otherwise, my husband has a full-time job as well. We both travel, we both work, we have to balance. But also, I think a lot of the time our guilt is what stops us from truly balancing. And, I would say to that, it's only natural that we feel guilt because we're mothers. We are connected to our children. But remember that what you are demonstrating to your children by having that balance is, one, that you're giving them a level of independence. They are feeling more and more independent because you are not on their side all the time. Secondly, this generation that we are raising is going to have more and more and see more and more women working. And so if you have a girl, you are showing her that you can grow up and work and have a family. And if you have a boy, you are prepping that boy from the start to accept the fact that women are doing what men are doing at work, that they should support women doing work in large corporations, that they should support their partners in the future and their daughters in the future. So you have to do some self-reminders along the way to say, no, I am not present with my son. I am present. When I'm here, I'm present. I'm with him. I'm playing with him. I spend time with him. My weekends are fully dedicated for him. But you know what? Weekdays, after, he's at school, after school, I'm not there. And that should be okay, because I'll be there at bedtime. And when I'm not there at bedtime, because I'm traveling, I'm on the phone. So
yeah. And unwinding.
Unwinding, it's hard for me because I personally developed a bad personal habit, but a very good work habit, to respond to my emails instantaneously. which helps me a lot at work because I don't have things piling up. My productivity is very lean at work because I do that, which allows me also to kind of slice in some maybe time during work to figure out, you know, a Halloween costume for my son or something like that. But it means that winding down or maybe kind of disconnecting makes it harder. When I go on vacations, I do recognize that I'm not going to respond to email maybe until the evening, and I'm fine with that. But my day-to-day evenings, I only wind down maybe after my son goes to sleep, and I just catch up with, you know, friends' news. I use social media more to learn about what my friends around the world are doing, peek into, you know, their families and feel like I'm still connected with my friends. I do, of course, I do yoga. I try to keep moving. Activities vary. Sometimes I do one activity, I step out of it, like I do drums and I stop, or I do horseback riding and I stop, just to keep bringing new things that I've not done before. So that's how I juggle.
Wonderful. New experiences. Yeah, I think that's and keep moving. Those are great ways. Just some strategies, Widad, you know, thoughts around what are some of the strategies that you would advise or share with our listeners that would help them grow in their organizations? And what would be your advice for the next generation, you know, moving up the ladder?
You know, Muna, I was thinking about that ladder this morning because I have a feeling that the way the new generation is moving and the way the workspace is moving, I'm not sure it's a ladder anymore, or it needs to be a ladder anymore, because the growth in your career these days, with so many new roles coming in, so many technologies coming in, replacing, you know, roles, it has to be around, is that role going to enrich you in your knowledge? It might be the same title. It might not be growing up into becoming a CEO or a VP, or, you know, it might take you from someone who's been doing operations to suddenly being an outside salesperson, right? It might take you from, you know, you've never done marketing, you've been like an engineer all your life, and then now you have an opportunity to dive into the digital marketing world, and you've been given that opportunity. This is, for me, career growth. It is not necessarily growing up in positions. It's being able to enrich your knowledge either deeply in one particular area. So if you don't want to broaden and do all sorts of things, that's fine. But deepen yourself even further and further and further in that. Become an even bigger specialist, the guru of something, right? Or become the jack of all trades, that an organization can depend on you to handle any particular job need they have. They can take you and they say, okay, no, you know, Widad was a GM, but you know what? We need a customer care leader here. We'll put her there. And I think that's career growth today. It's to be able to make yourself wealthier in experience and knowledge in the area you want to, you know, you want to work in, irrespective of the title. I mean, I don't know any organizations today that will shift you in another role but give you a pay cut. You won't get a pay cut, you know. Now, if you aspire to be a CEO, that's very different. You know, that's something you have to be willing to do, because the CEOs juggle a lot. Their life is work, and we have to accept that. Their life is dedicated to meetings and work and analysts and, you know, a different world. If you're up for that, then yes, push for it. But there's no, you will grow in your career. You will develop. You will feel fulfilled, regardless of the title and the ladder. And I think focusing on that, especially in the early part of your career, the mid-level career, I think will position you into a much better talent for any organization to hire you.
Any last words and advice for women within the industrial sphere?
Don't shy away from opportunities. Keep pushing, keep supporting each other, and never miss the opportunity as a decision maker around the table to make changes and push for changes that will make the path for women to enter the sector easier. This is what we need to do. We just need to make it easier for women to enter and to stay. We shouldn't forget the staying. How do we nurture and retain women in our industrial sector? The biggest mistake we would do is help bring them in and then realize they're leaving because the sector hasn't changed how we do things. So that would be my few comments.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. As we're coming to the end of our today's episode, I would like to thank you, Widad, for your time, for your genuinity and uniqueness in how you approach women in leadership. And thank you so much for your time today and your advice. And we wish you all the best on behalf of Kingsley Gate and continuous success. And I'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in for yet another inspirational story for women leaders in the Middle East. And we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Till the next one, goodbye and thank you.